Hey guys, welcome back. It's Yoga Therapy Thursdays, and this week we're going over how to strengthen your glute med. So your glute med is in charge of external rotation and a little bit of abduction. So we're going to start in a couple standing postures that you often see in a yoga class. This is one of those postures as a yoga teacher I cue all the time. We're going to do Warrior Two. So Warrior Two, hopefully you guys can see me. Your knee is supposed to be in line with your toes, right? Your front toes, your teacher tells you that over and over and over again, and your knee is above the ankle. That's to protect your knee. But the knee in line with your toes is to get you to engage your glute med. One thing you can do at home is you can cozy up next to a wall and do a Warrior Two. Be mindful if you have a baseboard, your baseboard might get in the way a little bit, and that's okay. And also be aware that usually the front part of your foot is a little bit wider than the back part. But get nice and close to the wall, knee in line with the toes, and really feel your glute and touch up against the wall. And then also try to reach the back side of your leg towards the wall. And that's gonna help engage your glute med. So you'll notice if you allow the knee to fall in, and then you squeeze to draw it back to the wall, that's your glute med working. So another pose that really engages the glute med is goddess. As a yoga teacher, I don't do this one as much in class. It doesn't really fit with my flows most of the time. But as a person on Instagram, this is a favorite. So many challenges, and I'm not sure why. But it is fun to do, and it's great for the glute med. So same thing, you wanna make sure your knees are in line with your toes. And you wanna think about taking the knees to the wall behind you. This doesn't have to be an extreme motion. You just wanna prevent the knees from collapsing inward. So draw the weight towards the outer edges of your feet. Make sure your tailbone is pointed down. We talked about this last week with your glute max. We don't want duck butt. Pull the tailbone under, tops the hips towards the low ribs. So again, goddess pose. And just like some of the other poses we did last week with glute med, you can go up and down. It really doesn't matter if you're strengthening what you're doing with your arms, unless your plan is to do something with your arms to help with mobility or stretching or strengthening. So next up is chair pose. We did chair pose last week for the glute max. This will be a twofer. I've got a really thick and large circular resistance band. If you don't have a circular resistance band, you can tie two ends of a resistance band together. You can even maybe use your arms to counter the action. So you want to wrap the band around your thighs, feet are hip distance apart. Last week we talked about your feet could be together for glute max engagement. Not so easy when you're talking about glute med engagement. It wouldn't be as great on the knees. And again, your hands could be at your hips, they could be out at cactus, they can be at heart center. You could lift your arms up, but not necessary. So we're gonna squat down into chair, and it's gonna be hard to tell. Oh, maybe not. You're just gonna take your knees out. So this is abduction. Now last week we did bird dog, and we pulse the leg straight up to work the glute max because it works in hip extension. This week, we're gonna do kind of an abduction. It's not bird dog. I always call it fire hydrant pose or dog peeing in a fire hydrant. And come up onto all fours, wrists underneath the shoulders, knees underneath the hips. Again, think about tops of the hips towards the low ribs to engage your core, your transverse abdominis. And as we talked about last week, you might wanna walk your supporting leg in so it's in line with the midline of your body. And now we're gonna take our outer leg, or the leg that we wanna work, just straight up. And this is when, again, where you have a mirror. I'm gonna watch this video later and be like, oh, my leg's not parallel to the ground. It's okay. You're gonna end up feeling this here in your glute med. You're probably gonna feel it on the supporting leg too, because your supporting leg's preventing your entire torso from rolling over. So you just lift that leg up. You can flex your foot if you'd like. Maybe play around until you really find that. And it's not like, ooh, how high can I lift my leg? It's just a simple lift and lower, just to feel the engagement. Next up, we have clam shells. If you've ever been to physical therapy for anything hip related, chances are you've had to do this pose. You can do this without a wall, but sometimes it's helpful to have that proprioceptive feedback. If you lay right up against the wall, it's also gonna help to make sure your hips are in the proper alignment. So from laying on your side, you want your hips directly stacked on top of one another. A lot of times when I do this, or see other people do it, this hip opens up and it decreases the amount of motion that we're gonna get out of our top leg. So make sure your hips are stacked. You rest your head on a pillow or your arm, and it's just a simple movement. And keep your feet together and open your knees. So the top knee lifts up and down, and you should feel it right there in your glute med. It's pretty much the only thing working. And do a few as you would like. Another option similar to the clam shells is this Pilates movement. This kind of big kick, but it's gonna be sideways. So you're gonna lay on your mat. I'm kind of trying just to stay within the camera space here. You wanna line up your back along the back edge of your mat, and your feet come towards the front edge of your mat, but the legs are straight. You're gonna rotate your top leg so the blade of the foot is parallel to the floor. That's gonna help engage your glute meds. And then just like we did with the clam shells and the bird dogs and the fire hydrants, it's not a big movement. You just wanna lift and lower. Think about lifting the heel up as you move through this, and that's where you're gonna feel this great glute med engagement. You can lift, you can hold, you can pulse. So this week I give you several different ways to work your glute meds. Just like with all the other exercises, you can do them in a yoga class, or you can turn them into these more calisthenic type workouts, where you can hold, you can pulse, or you can do the full range of movement. So remember, we started the series with Constructive Rest, where we released our psoas. Then we moved on to hip mobility, and now we're going through strengthening. So you can choose to do any of the strengthening exercises or all of them. Did glute max last week, did glute med this week. We're gonna do several other exercises over the next several weeks. So you can pick and choose, but try to do it in that order. Thanks for joining me. See you next week.